The fall wasn't an accident. I knew that the second my foot slipped on the polished wooden step, too slick with the wax my sister had been giggling about just an hour before, my arms flailed, my stomach twisted, and before I could even catch the railing, my body tumbled hard down the stairs, each step cracking against my back and shoulder until I slammed into the bottom with a sharp snap in my wrist. The world blurred. My ears rang. I couldn't breathe. For a second, all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my head, louder than the pain. Then, laughter. High, shrill, and cruel. I tried to push myself up, but my arm buckled. My body crumpled to the floor, cheek pressed against the cold wood. Warmth spread down my temple where my head had split open. My eyes blinked rapidly, but instead of hands rushing to help, I saw glowing phone screens. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. My father's voice cut sharp above me, dripping with venom. Get this on video, Linda. Finally, our little garbage looks like she belongs on the ground. My mother's laugh echoed, her phone tilted, capturing me sprawled across the floor like entertainment. Finally, she sneered, she looks like what she is beneath us, trash. My sister Madison leaned over the railing at the top, her lips curled into a victorious smirk. She was 22, always the golden child, and now her eyes glowed like she'd won some game. Careful, Mom. Don't zoom in too close, she teased. You don't want to break your screen with her ugly face. Their laughter filled the hallway, bouncing off the walls, stabbing deeper than the pain in my body. My stomach twisted, my blood smeared across the hardwood as I tried to crawl forward, each drag of my elbow leaving streaks behind me. My wrist bent wrong, my knee screamed, but all I could think was, get away. But I couldn't, not really, because every time I lifted my head, they were still there, recording, laughing, cheering. My father stepped over me, his polished shoes inches from my face. He didn't bend to help. He didn't even hesitate. He looked down like I was nothing more than spilled milk. Don't bother crying, he spat. You've been nothing but a burden since the day you were born. If you're broken now, at least you finally look the part. I gasped, choking on air, my throat raw as I croaked, Please, help! My mother crouched down, her phone still recording, her eyes glinting with malice. Help? You want help? Then clean up your own mess. Crawl like the useless animal you are. Madison has a recital tomorrow. She deserves our time, not you. Madison's laughter cracked from the top of the stairs. Don't worry, sis. I'll dedicate my performance to you, the fall of the worthless. Sounds dramatic enough, right? Tears burned my eyes, mixing with blood trickling down my temple. I pulled myself forward inch by inch, their shadows following me, their phones recording every humiliating second. I could hear the shutter clicks as they took pictures, already planning to keep this memory as a trophy. By the time I dragged myself to the living room, my arms shook violently, my body trembling. I collapsed against the couch, unable to move further. My mother's voice slashed through the air again. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. You've embarrassed this family every day of your life. At least now the world will see what you really are. The sound of their laughter blurred into the ringing in my ears. I felt the walls close in, every breath shallow, every muscle burning. For a brief second, I wondered if this was it, if I'd simply fade out here on the floor, their cameras pointed at me until my chest stopped rising. But something lit inside me then, a fire. It wasn't just anger, it was a promise. They wanted me crawling, they wanted me broken, they wanted me beneath them forever. Fine. I would crawl now. I would bleed now. I would let them laugh and record and cheer. But one day soon I would rise. And when I did, the very floor they stepped over me to protect their precious bags, their pride, the golden daughter, I would make them choke on it. The pain didn't matter anymore. The humiliation didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was the vow that hardened in my chest as I lay there listening to their laughter. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The days that followed the fall blurred together, but the humiliation stayed razor sharp. My body healed slowly, my wrist wrapped in a cheap brace I had to buy myself, my ribs sore every time I breathed, the bruise on my forehead fading to a sick yellow. But what didn't heal was the memory of their laughter. The sound of my parents' phones clicking like paparazzi flashes burned into me worse than the pain. Everywhere I turned in that house, they reminded me of it. At breakfast, my father slapped his phone on the table, smirking. "Want to see your best performance yet?" he asked, scrolling until the video of me crawling appeared. My voice on the clip was weak, begging, "Please, help," while my mother laughed behind the camera. Madison giggled, sipping her orange juice. "It's even better in slow motion," she mocked, replaying my tumble frame by frame. "Pathetic," my mother said, waving her fork at me like it was final judgment. "You were born beneath us. Don't act surprised that you finally look it." I ate my toast in silence, swallowing their cruelty like poison. The next week, Madison had her big recital. The house was buzzing with excitement, my parents fussing over her hair, her dress, her shoes. They didn't ask how I was doing, if my wrist still ached, if my ribs still stung. They only cared that Madison looked flawless. "Stand in the back," my father ordered when I tried to join the family photo before they left. "You'll ruin it with your face." My mother didn't even look at me. "Stay home. Clean the floor. That's where you belong." And just like that, the door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the silence of the house. I stood there staring at the dust motes in the air and felt something inside me snap. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried days ago. What replaced them was colder, sharper. I realized then I had wasted years begging for scraps of love that would never exist. My parents didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as their entertainment, their punching bag, their convenient servant. And Madison? She wasn't just the golden child. She was their weapon, sharpened on my pain. That night, I locked my bedroom door and opened the notebook I'd started after the fall. Page after page, I wrote everything down. Their words, their actions, every cruel laugh, every time they stepped over me, every insult. The ink bled hard and angry into the paper. But it wasn't just journaling. It was planning. I started small, quiet, testing the waters. One afternoon, I overheard Madison bragging on the phone about how she'd borrowed jewelry from a friend and hadn't returned it. I wrote it down. Another day, my father boasted to a neighbor about writing off expenses for his company that never actually existed. I wrote it down. My mother whispered on a call about money she'd skimmed from her charity group. I wrote it down. They thought I was invisible, and they were right, but not in the way they imagined. Being invisible meant I could see everything, hear everything, collect everything. At night, I replayed the video of me crawling, not because I wanted to relive the pain, but because it fueled me. Each frame was gasoline on the fire in my chest. I let their laughter echo in my ears until it hardened me like armor. Weeks passed. Madison's recital went viral on the local scene. The community adored her. My parents beamed with pride, telling everyone their daughter was destined for greatness. I sat quietly in the shadows, watching, waiting. Then came the night of the family dinner. My father poured wine. My mother set the table. Madison strutted in wearing a designer dress. "You'll never be me," she whispered as she passed me, smirking. Dinner was a parade of insults disguised as conversation. "Do you still limp when you walk?" my father asked with a chuckle, passing Madison the steak. "You should have stayed at the bottom of those stairs," my mother added. "Would have saved us all the embarrassment." "Honestly," Madison said between bites, "you should thank us for recording it. At least you're famous for something." I looked at them one by one. My father's smug grin, my mother's disdain, Madison's arrogance, and I realized something. They weren't just cruel, they were careless. Careless enough to think I'd never fight back. Careless enough to believe their golden bubble would never pop. That night, after they fell asleep, I sat in my room, surrounded by stacks of notes, dates, details, overheard conversations. My notebook had become something more, a weapon. I whispered to myself in the dark. "You recorded me crawling, bleeding, humiliated. Now it's my turn. And when I'm done, the world won't see me on the floor. They'll see you where you belong, beneath me. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. And for the first time, I saw the beginning of their end. It started with Madison because she was their crown jewel, the golden ticket they paraded in front of the world. I'd spent weeks collecting proof of her lies, stolen jewelry, plagiarized pieces in her music portfolio, the drugs she hid in her violin case when she went out to parties. All of it sat neatly in a folder I built in silence. She bragged too much, posted too much online, left too many careless trails. The world adored her perfection, but I knew her rot. The night of her big audition for the State Symphony, my parents dressed her like a queen. My mother fixed her hair with trembling pride, my father recorded her warm-up, and they both beamed as though they were about to walk the red carpet with her. "Stay home," my father hissed at me. "You'll jinx her with your presence." "Trash belongs in the shadows," my mother added. I nodded, pretending to obey, but that night I didn't stay home. Instead, I walked into the auditorium 15 minutes before her audition, quiet, unnoticed, and handed the folder to the director. Inside were screenshots, recordings, photos. The jewelry still marked as stolen. The late-night posts where Madison bragged about playing dumb to get free rides. The receipts showing she'd submitted music pieces stolen from online composers. By the time Madison stepped on stage, violin in hand, whispers had already rippled through the judges' panel. The audition didn't even last 5 minutes. She was asked to leave. My parents fumed, confused, demanding answers. Madison looked at me across the hall, her face drained, eyes wide as though she knew. That was strike one. But I wasn't done. Next came my father. He was careless with money, always bragging about tax tricks and writing off expenses. I'd collected years of it. Fake companies, fake receipts, hush-hush cash deals. I didn't expose it to the world with a dramatic reveal. No, that would have been too obvious, too quick. Instead, I sent it quietly to the tax authorities, anonymous, untraceable. Weeks later, men in suits came knocking on our door. My father's face went pale as they laid documents on the table, pointing out every fraud, every fake number, every fabricated expense. My mother screamed, Madison cried, but my father just sat there sweating through his shirt. That was strike two. And then my mother, the woman who recorded me bleeding on the floor, laughing while I begged. She ran a small charity in town, a fund for children's education that she loved to show off at social events. But I knew she skimmed money. I'd watched her write checks to herself, transfer donations into her personal account, and then brag about how generous she was in public. I gathered it all. Screenshots of bank transfers, copies of checks, even a recording of her mocking donors on the phone. Idiots think their money is feeding kids. It's feeding my shopping trips. I delivered that proof to the charity board right before their annual gala. My mother arrived that night in a glittering dress, ready to give her big speech, only to be escorted off stage in front of the entire crowd. Whispers turned to gasps as the board announced an investigation. Her friends, her admirers, her entire social circle, gone in one night. That was strike three. By then, the house that once echoed with their laughter at my pain was silent. Madison stayed locked in her room, her career in ashes. My father sat hunched at the kitchen table, piles of tax papers choking him. My mother paced in circles, her phone buzzing with angry calls she didn't answer. And me? I walked through that silence with steady steps, no longer afraid, no longer crawling. The final blow came one rainy evening when they gathered in the living room arguing. "You ruined us," my father snapped at Madison. "No, you ruined us," Madison screamed back. "If you'd covered for me like you always do." "Shut up, both of you," my mother shrieked, clutching her phone. "Do you understand? We have nothing left. Nothing." I stepped into the doorway watching them crumble. For the first time in my life, they looked small, powerless, just as they'd left me on the floor. "You did this," my father spat at me when he saw me standing there. "Didn't you?" I didn't deny it. I didn't flinch. I walked slowly across the room, every step echoing. "You recorded me crawling," I said quietly, bleeding, laughing. "You wanted the world to see me broken." Their faces froze. Now, I whispered. "Look at yourselves." The storm outside howled against the windows as I turned and walked away, their silence heavier than the thunder. They weren't parents anymore. They weren't gods lording above me. They were just three broken people sitting in the ruins of their own cruelty. And me? I wasn't crawling anymore. I was standing tall. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.